Hello everyone, I'm pleased to welcome all of you to NAX Tech Adopter Sessions, where we have a pleasure to talk to some of the best technologists in industry and have really conversation about the products, technology, leadership, and all combined. And today I have a pleasure to welcome Fergus Porter, who connects to us from Australia, and I'll be connecting from Austin, Texas. So it's gonna be not only several time zones, but also different continents and even different days, I guess. But yeah,
it's Tuesday morning.
It's a Tuesday. Yeah, it's Tuesday morning. Well, for me, it's still end of the Monday. So you're one day closer to the weekend than I am. So Fergus, welcome. Thank you for joining and thank you for finding time for us. I hope we have a very insightful conversation today. How are you today, Fergus?
I'm very good, and thank you very much, Valentyn, for inviting me to have a discussion with you. I've been looking forward to this and catching up with you.
Perfect, thank you. And Fergus, if you don't mind, just maybe telling to the listeners, what's the Converge International is, and if you can elaborate just a little bit on what are your core product solution and what company offers on the market and what value it brings to your clients, really.
Yes. Okay. Well, we are an employee well-being organization, which in the old days people used to call employee assistance programs. We're much more than that. We do provide 24-hour coverage for supporting employees who are going through personal or work trauma. And we do that both on a planned basis, but also for critical response to particular incidents that may happen. For example, some of our customers are emergency services. So if they deal with trauma, it could be a shooting, it could be something where there's been a death that they've witnessed, and we have to assist them in dealing with the trauma and recovery from such an event. In addition to that, we also provide training consulting, which is a planned basis for organizations to transform. And that could be including such things as cultural development, individual manager training, but also if the organization is going through upheaval, which could be restructuring, etc., that we work through that with the organization themselves. And in addition to that, we also embed our staff with our customers out at remote sites. That could be where, say, for example, a fly-in, fly-out situation at a mine, or a remote location where our people are there 24 hours a day with people who are on shifts, so that as they come in and out of their shifts, that they can talk to somebody if they need to.
Thank you, Fergus. Yeah, and if you can also maybe just in a few words explain what are your typical customers look like, and between all of these challenges, what are maybe top 5, 3 of the challenges they face, and how you really help them addressing it.
Well, it's very interesting. We don't have a typical customer. Everybody is possibly a customer of ours. We cover a wide range of industries, a lot of government, as I mentioned, people in emergency services, people who are in retail, finance, across the spectrum of industries. The thing is, anybody who has employees, anybody who has people in their organization that have real life situations that they need to deal with, and that could be, as I said, personal issues, it could be career development, money problems, could be existential. One of the things that we are acutely aware is that mental health is not something that just happens to somebody. It happens to everybody at some stage in their lives, and therefore our organization to help people get through those kind of traumas, those kind of problems that they have, and deal with moving on to a more happier and healthy life. Employee well-being goes beyond just mental health. It goes into physical health, safety, and these are the kind of things where the type of customers that we have may have, say, a diverse, younger and group of employees who are concerned about where they are. They could be working late at night. They need to get home safely. They could be people who are dealing with other people who are in unsafe situations, and we need to track where they are and also help them if something goes wrong.
And I definitely can understand some of these challenges, because we in consulting business is pretty tough business as well. And all of these challenges you describe definitely appear in my team as well. So kind of
yes, it's not uncommon. Mental health used to be stigmatized, and I think that the more and more we realize that it's normal. People, have stress, they have strain, they have things that happen in their life that just make them question, what did I do wrong? What should I do better? And it may not be, a safe space necessarily to discuss that with other people at work. And they need to go somewhere and talk to somebody who will actually help them unpack an issue that's happened and also plan a way forward. And that's what we do. We're there for people. And, we talk about employees, talk about employers, but essentially we are there for people. And that's what we are. We're a people organization.
Sounds good. Thank you, Fergus. And if you can just explain to me the role of the CIO in your company, because between the saving of some of the critical data and some of the personal information from the customers, which is probably very important for you, but also addressing some of the innovative part of the solution. Maybe you can elaborate on this a little bit.
Okay. Well, not unusual in any industry. The CIOs typically, it has two main roles. One is innovation and the other is operational. Healthcare is one of those industries that for a long time has probably spent less on innovation and technology than it did on the actual provision of its services. For example, in a hospital, you would tend to find expenses being spent on equipment that saves lives, on nurses, on doctors, and on areas of technology that are very specific to treatment program. However, with mental health, and particularly the kind of industry that we're in right now, it has been in the past face-to-face, where you would go and talk to somebody. And probably over the last 5 or so years, there's been a huge shift to different platforms, particularly telehealth. And that, was precipitated in large by things like COVID, but also by changing demographic of people who are using the services. Younger people are more open to different channels, like, for example, chat, telehealth, which it might be, voice, or it could be video, and not necessarily needing to be in the same room as somebody. And in fact, there are studies that say that younger people are happier dealing with anonymous channels, where it could be chat, where they don't even know whether they're speaking to a human or a chat bot, and therefore they're more likely to be open about what they say. Now, we are a people-to-people organization, so we use these channels to actually connect our counseling staff with people who are in need of help. And one of my roles has been to enable innovation through a digital transformation, where we've moved from that face-to-face scenario to using things like online booking, so that you don't need to call our call center and relive your trauma. You can easily make a booking to talk to somebody quickly, same day, or book it at a time and a place what suits you, and through a modality that suits you. And we also, of course, have to deal with operational issues, which are things like, as you mentioned, data protection, confidentiality, security, and these are things which, as you would know, are at the forefront of every CIO's concerns nowadays. We have to make sure that our systems are up 24/7. We have to make sure that if we have a disaster, and that could be, weather, it could be terrorist attack, it could be anything, loss of power in all of our data centers, that we're able to recover and we're able to continue our business, because, really the kind of service that we provide can save lives. In fact, that's one of our success criteria, how we measure ourselves. So in order to be able to do that, we have to have our services up as much as possible. So the operational side, unfortunately, is not as glamorous, but it is, exciting when it comes to things like cybersecurity and making sure that we are compliant with our data regulations, as you mentioned, protecting the personal identification of our clients and our customers, and making sure that everybody's in a safe space, that their innermost fears and discussions that they have with their counselors are kept private and confidential.
Yeah, I definitely like your approach to the telemedicine, because I'm a big fan and big user of that. And I almost feel like here in the US, the regulations kind of stop or slow down just a little bit the innovation. So I just wonder, what's your view on that? Is it really the case for only US market, or globally? And is it really there is a clash? Does it even exist between technology and regulations, and how do you see it in the future?
Well, I think that it's a challenge because on one hand you have to weigh innovation and the things that can change your business and provide
Mm-hmm.
better service. On the other hand, you have to consider security, you have to consider
Mm-hmm.
performance and cost. And the last thing I mentioned is probably the biggest challenge for healthcare, because unlike a bank or a telco or an airline, our funds for research and development are quite limited, and which means that we have to be innovative, but at a sensible cost, and that means that we have to plan ahead. We don't tend to do things that are way out there, like a bank or a telco who can afford to spend 10 million trying something out. We have to make sure that every cent that we spend actually delivers value, not just to our business, but to our customers and to our clients. And the fact is that whilst we innovate, we spend a lot of time making sure that what we do will work. It's not a maybe it'll work, and it's not a, oh, well, if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. So that's why when we do something, we have a strong team who have good experience and skills and can bring that to our organization. But we go out and we work with people such as NIX, who are a great partner that enable us to make the possible possible, as opposed to dreaming the impossible and trying to make that happen. So, it doesn't mean that we don't innovate. It doesn't mean that we don't do something new and interesting. But it's usually tried and tested, perhaps in another industry. We know that this approach, which could be to, say, online services or security, they're things that work elsewhere. And that's critical for us, because we don't have the time, and we certainly don't have the money to do endless research and development.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Fergus. And since we already talked about the technology, I'm sure our listeners will be curious to hear your opinion on some of the most advanced technologies we have right now in terms of the Gen AI and all of this, industry copilots, the things which can talk to you and potentially save the time of the experts in your industry, or maybe like improve the accuracy, but also it comes with the downside. So I'm just curious, what's your view on these technologies and how close you are in implementing them in your roadmaps?
Well, I find generative AI very, very interesting, and I use it every day because I'm a technologist, and I find myself continuously working in problem solving. And just like you might in the old days, you go up and you'd ask Fred, well, what's wrong with my program? AI is great at telling you what's wrong with your program right now. In fact, it's great at doing a lot of things which Fred might have done for you in the past. I was speaking to a colleague the other day, and we were talking about, how many lines of new code does a programmer really write these days? And the answer is probably zero, because, you can get a template for everything. You can get a piece of code that does what you need it to do. So from that perspective, that co-pilot aspect, I think, is really, really great. One of the dangers, of course, of using generative AI is that sometimes it makes stuff up. So if you're asking it something, to do with policy or process, or to give you, a well thought out response to a question perhaps that the customers ask you, you really got to work through the response and actually see, is this real? Not saying that it's all rubbish, but sometimes, there are rubbish documents out there on the internet that are trained models. Now, that aside, large language models that are specialists in particular technologies or in particular industries, I think are going to be game changers. Not so much from the software vendor who's going to actually deliver an AI model for developing new applications on their software platform. What would be more interesting to see from them would be something that helps us reverse engineer the crap that we built on their platform in the past and make it better. Now, that would be fantastic. I think that's not likely to come from software vendors. That's likely going to come from innovators in maybe the open source forum, or from people such as yourselves who say, this is a problem and we know how to fix it. So I think there's a lot still to come on AI, and particularly generative AI. In other areas that where AI will be used, particularly in healthcare. We've already seen changes, particularly in the medical side, where analysis of large volumes of data and finding things that the human eye would take an awful long time to find, or that the mind would take an awful long time to process, but also getting to defining a pattern. Now, this is something that we're very interested in, particularly around things like medical triage and triaging somebody who is in trauma to determine what's the best care path for them. And I think that's something that's developing. There are some leaders in this I've seen, particularly out of the UK, that we're very interested in, and we're watching how that develops. And I think that that's going to make a big difference in our industry in the long term, because we will be able to deal with more people faster, but also reduce the cost of engaging with individual people.
And speaking about the selecting the new technologies for like either as the technology which boosts the development of the product you own, or as the one of the features of your product. So what's your approach in like selecting the technology and really validating the value for your teams, for your business, for your customers, for your clients?
Well, for us, the main technology changes that we've done over the last couple of years have been in the digitization of our business. Because unlike, when you go to see your GP or, your local doctor, it's usually a one-to-one relationship. Now, imagine that we have millions of employees that depend upon us, and backed by a couple of thousand clinicians. Now, they could be a specialist in a particular area. For example, they could be in work-related stress, or it could be in eating disorders. And depending on what the employee presents with, the problem that they need help with, where they are, when they're available, what medium they'd like to choose for their engagement with the consultant, we have a very complex matching algorithm that we have built ourselves, which is part of our platform, that enables us to get the perfect match at the perfect time between the customer and the consultant. And this is in itself was I think a world first in terms of the complexity and the detail of the match, but also then to combine that with online availability via our online booking system, which we have both available in our mobile app and also via web browser. So the idea is that it's care anytime, anywhere. So you as an employee are able to avail of those technology services to get the match with the right person to deal with the issues that you're presenting with. And that's enabled us to reduce, the intake of a new a person into our organization from something like 15 minutes to a minute, because it tends to be quite an interactive data capture process in actually getting to understand what are the needs of the person who is looking for help. That's something that we're going to constantly strive to improve, both in quality and also in timeliness. So I think that in the future, I think we may see that AI will come into that process, which will make it easier for us to get to the stage where somebody's going to tell us a little bit more and help with that triage. And in fact, I think that AI triage and also aftercare, continuous care, after their individual sessions, are where AI is going to play a big part. And that's something that I think that we will invest in, in the coming years as it gets better, because we don't want to just jump in and try it out because it's cool. We want to try it out when we know it works. And when we know that the health and well-being of our customers is going to be ensured.
Yeah, for sure. And that makes sense. Once it's worked for healthcare, I think it means the technology is very well proven and really resilient to some errors and some hallucination. That's important thing to have for sure.
Yeah. Now, we also do include things like wearable technologies for monitoring health. And in fact, we have a mobile application that deals with wearable technology. So the people from our customers that have signed up for this, we can monitor their heart rates, etc., and also their stress levels. And we can infer that maybe it's time for you to talk to somebody. Maybe, we've noticed that your mood has been down, your heart rate's up, you've got perhaps some anxiety. Do you need to talk to somebody? And it's about early intervention. And this is where I think AI and predictive analytics, from a broader set of data, and we have a lot of data, is very useful for us to be able to assist without the customer even knowing. And that's why, an omni-channel strategy for us to engage with both, the employers and employees, will create a relationship that's sustaining over time, and enables them to actually build trust, both trust with, the service, and trust with the consultants that they meet, but also trust in the data that we're providing back to them, which says, maybe you need to slow down, or maybe you need to talk to somebody, but it's still your choice. And the thing is that trust is a very important part of this whole process. And we want to be trusted by our customers, because without that, we're just, a money-making business.
And speaking of data, I think the data you have might be very interesting for the companies like in marketing and retail, because for them, like sales is either selling on top of opportunity or on fear, like fear of missing opportunity, etc. So I think understanding the behavior of the customer is critical for them. And it seems like you might have some data which they will be interested in that. I'm just wondering if they were even trying to I don't know, get some partnership with you, trying to get this data. I'm sure that's important.
It's a pretty much a cloak, because the data that we gather on our customers, and whether it's clinical data, personal data, whilst it's very useful for us to train our staff, our models, and to be able to identify patterns, that's, on one hand, that belongs to the customer. That's their data. It's about them. It's as confidential as you going to the doctor and talking about a growth on your foot. Equally, the anonymized data is very statistically useful for us. They are things that, of course, from a clinical perspective, clinicians like to share observations, and notes, and patterns and changes. And, I think that's just a normal activity in healthcare. But when it comes to selling to marketers, well, complete no. Our marketing team are focused on developing our brand with our existing and potential customer base, which are the employers. But also, their primary focus is telling the employees of the that are able to avail of our service of what they can avail of, when they can avail of it, in order to help them, as opposed to simply just market on a broader scale.
Right. So in other words, it's more like collaborative filtration, when you can find some pattern between several people and see what help each of them, and kind of offers them the better solution for their problems, versus selling it outside. Right. Yeah, that's a very smart way of using this data. And I'm sure your customers will not be very happy if you give out the data, but for the sake of improving the service, improving what value they get, I think it makes sense, especially in the personalized way. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yes.
Fergus. And so technology data is just a part of this equation of people, processes, tools, and partners. So I just wonder how we can combine efficiently all of these pieces together in order to provide best in the breed service and the best product on the market.
Well, it hasn't been easy. As I mentioned with healthcare, the first and primary focus of all of our people is always to deliver care, and technology is something that is perhaps an enabler for growth. It's an enabler for cost reduction, but not necessarily has it been the primary care path. And I think what's changed, particularly in our business over the last few years, is that shift in the channels or the modality of how we deliver services to our customers. And I think that, when we look at e-health and, from both diagnosis, treatment plans, but also engagement, encouraging people to actually use services that previously they would have thought, look, it's too hard. I've got to take a day off work. I've got to go sit in somebody's office. I'm really not that comfortable sitting in an office talking to somebody face to face. I think the evolution of digital technologies, which we've embraced and which we're one of the market leaders in, has enabled us not only to remove that obstacle, but also to expand out the potential base of people who would seek some help who ordinarily wouldn't, because they, on one hand, it's a bit nameless, faceless, but on the other hand, it's easier to make that contact. It's easier to talk to somebody who isn't necessarily, you feel, going to be sitting there in the classic psychoanalytic situation of nodding their head and taking notes. Our sessions tend to be very interactive. And that goes even down to chat-based counselling, which we launched recently, where we're able to fit into somebody's day. They may be somebody who's busy. They've got they're on the go, or they're actually working, but in between tasks they may be saying, "Look, can you help me with this?" And that's a new departure for us. And so we've come a long way from face-to-face meetings to being able to leverage technology, from the ingestion of new people into the organization, but also then in the channels through which we can deliver care. So I think that the whole digitization has changed, turned this industry upside down, and made us a more effective service partner for our customers.
Sounds good, Fergus. Yeah, and it seems like you are creating the product which is very important for the market, and also I think adoption of technology is also important, and the speed of adoption is important, and all of this lead me to the conclusion that, I mean, in general, to support all of this, you need very high performing teams and individuals in these teams. So I just wonder, what's your, if you can share with our listeners, what's your approach in building the team and making sure they're performing well, making sure their own mental health is okay, because you are a company who help with that for others. How do you help to your own teams with that? So if you can elaborate on that, Fergus, please.
Well, it's very interesting that you should talk about it in those terms, and thank you for that. Look, I think people within an effective team tend to be ones that work well on their own, but also work well as a team, who communicate well, who perhaps trust each other is probably one of the key points in that. I think it's important that you have people with the right technical skills. In an organization such as Converge, we don't have the luxury of having a large IT department. So we don't have many tiers. It tends to be very flat. And that means that each team or each subsection of the group knows what they've got to do. They know who they've got to work with, and they work well with them. And I think that it doesn't necessarily mean that we have everybody's the same personality type. In fact, we're quite different. But one of the things that we do well is that we understand our different communication styles, our needs to be heard, or our needs not to be talkative, if that's the kind of personality we have. But on top of that, we need strong leadership. Not just me at the top, it's individuals. Leadership is something that is bottom up. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, everybody, decides what we're going to do, but everybody has an opinion. Everybody has ideas, and we'd be silly not to listen to some of those ideas, particularly the fact that we have some of our best technicians are people who have, 5, 6, 10 years experience as opposed to 20 or 30. But also it's trust. I think I'm pretty good at what I do in terms of my technology skills and my experience, but I surround myself with people who are better than me at doing various things. And that means not only do I have somebody who I can trust to get the job done, I don't have to worry about it. They don't have to be told by me what to do, and therefore I'm not micromanaging them, and I don't have to worry about what happens on a day-to-day basis. But the great thing is if there's a crisis, if there's a problem, you have this huge pool of people, and huge pool could be 5 or 6 people who are really experienced, who you trust, to solve a problem. And therefore, it's not let's think about that overnight. It's we figure out things pretty quickly, and everybody knows what their place is in getting action done. I think strong leadership at all levels is important, but a high level of engagement with the team, and that may even be, so far as if everybody's working remotely, making contact with somebody just to say, hey, how's it going? What's new? What did you do recently? And also being receptive to ask anything. Ask me anything. I will tell you the answer if I know it, and it's not confidential, and it's not something that I don't want to tell you. And that's pretty much what we do. And I think it means that we deal with the rumor trail, or we deal with concerns pretty quickly.
Yeah, I like your idea of building the leadership. And leadership is not only like, giving commands. I mean, like you can be a leader in, you can be a leader in front end, and every team member is kind of consider you as the smartest guy or girl in the room who can share some of the experience, and the back end the same, and some process key, etc. And speaking about the working on remote and building the teams and the trust, like what's your best practices on like building the trust on the remote? Because I know like many of your team members work remotely and like spread across the world pretty much. So what's your personal best practice how to really build the trust and connect with people like 10,000 miles and kilometers away?
One of the things that we do is that we do measure. We do actually set targets for people to do things, and we do have deadlines. They don't go flying by. We do track what people are working on, and but we are not concerned about where they are, what time of day they work. No, we don't have a hard 9 to 5 policy. And in fact, as you mentioned, because we have people who work, in Ukraine, we have people who work in India, we have people, who work all around Australia. It would be silly for us to say there's a meeting at 9 a.m. Be there. And this is where that trust is a personal thing. So we have people who we connect individually, but also because we tend to hire for skill and experience, trust is either there in day one, or it develops very quickly, or it's never going to be there. And that is one of the things that we're very careful about, both in choices of our staff and also of our long-term partners. That I think it's part skill and experience in working in this industry, but also the people that we choose to work with, the personalities, the skills that they demonstrate when we first meet, and also how they deliver when they're actually working with us. So, I have absolutely no worries about anybody that we have working in our team or our partners. And if I do, I don't hold back. It's essentially, what are we going to do to improve this? And it's what do we need as a group to improve this? It's not simply don't like that person, get rid of them. We don't do that, because that would be silly. It could be that person's doing exactly as we asked, but we haven't asked them to do the right thing, or we haven't assumed, or we haven't listened to something that they have an issue with. So we always go into, investigating how can we make this better, as opposed to what do we do to get this person to be better. It's what's the outcome that we want, and how are we going to get to that one. So in part, it's the people, and part it's the process. And our process within our organization, we will change depending on the type of work that we're doing, who we're doing it with, who's the customer, who are internal people that need to be involved, and who's actually going to do the work. So whilst we do use Agile, we're kind of flexible with our Agile. But we also have to realize that, being an Agile IT team, we work in an organization where people like to understand what's going on. They need to understand, what are you spending the money on? When is it going to be done? Is it going to have this? Is it going to have that? And we forgot to tell you what we needed. And now that we've seen what you've given us, we think we want to change it. So we have to react to a situation where the world isn't perfect. Don't get stressed about it. We'll do what we can. We'll change what we need to, but we're also cognizant of the fact that we're going to run out of money at some stage. So there's when it comes to the process, it has to be flexible. It has to be cognizant of who's involved, and it also has to be able to work within the constraints that the board or the CEO sets, which could be time or money. And so it sounds like chaos, but it's our chaos. It's an agile approach to getting work done. That means that we use the minimum amount of red tape, but we get the most out of our people because the people are flexible and skilled enough to be able to deal with it.
No, it's a great answer. You only can make people in your team most effective by empowering them, from what I hear, and by empowering, like, you give them the request to be proactive, but you also provide them with enough information to be correctly proactive, not make a mistake. But once they do these mistakes, it comes with the license to do these mistakes time to time, and the safe environment to kind of fix them as you go, because this proactiveness is more important than several mistakes a year. I think that's critical. And coming back to the AI developers, which, like we or not, will be reality for the nearest future, I guess, like, I don't know, in the next few years at least, the AI developers for certain areas will probably be appearing on them in the industry. So I'm just wondering, like, this futuristic question, if in few years, instead of hiring another person to your team, you will be offered with AI developer who doesn't have any feelings, makes less mistake, but at the same time doesn't bring, this team spirit to the team. So what will be your, I don't know, pros and cons of accepting this type of help in the team?
I'm hopeful that the tools that we use will be better equipped to deal with learning curves. I think they'll be better at helping us change. One thing that AI lacks is a bit of personality. It lacks real world experience. And, maybe right now I can't sit in a meeting and listen to what 12 different people are saying or thinking, but haven't said until after the meeting when it stops listening. And I think that real world situations mean that AI, certainly within the next, perhaps 5 years or so, will be in that co-pilot seat rather than the pilot seat. And I think that it will be very interesting to see, how the technology will enable us to do things like refactoring, as I mentioned. That's fixing the sins of the past, making things better, as opposed to starting from scratch and saying, here's a whole new suite of software that I developed in 30 seconds while you were typing in what you wanted or while I was listening to what you were saying. I think it's still a little far away to say that the programmer will be the computer itself. It's possible, to say that maybe in 5 to 10 years' time. I think that it's going to be interesting to watch how it develops. I've been around long enough to have gone through, 4GLs and these massive no-code platforms that everybody says are fabulous and you don't need to do anything. And the thing is that a lot of technologies, whilst they promised great things, in general, they haven't been fantastic. They've always had foibles. They've always had something that was not quite right, that required manual intervention, that required a human to say, it generated this, but that's what I wanted, and go in and change that code. Whether it's no code, low code, 4GL, or even AI, there's always a foible. Even a nice piece of code that ChatGPT can throw out in Python or C++, it'll still require a little bit of changing and insertion into existing code bases and into existing frameworks. When we get to the stage where the AI is so good that it's able to take this instructions, perhaps in a structured manner, to be able to develop entire systems or to be able to completely refactor existing millions of lines of C code or whatever, that will be great. But ultimately, who's going to test it? Humans are. And I certainly wouldn't be very comfortable about taking an AI-generated system and putting it into production and hoping for the best. So I think that when we start doing things like testing, and we'll find, oh, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right. So it's going to be an iterative process. Not saying it's not going to happen. I just don't think it's going to happen at the speed that some people are predicting. I could be wrong. In fact, I probably will be looking back at this in 5 years' time saying, what was I thinking? But right now, I think that it's exciting. It's very useful as a co-pilot, but I wouldn't want it to fly the plane just yet.
I think all of this LLM, they learn on what human created, right? And by the way, hey, human brains still have much more neurons than any the biggest neural networks in the world, right? So I think I totally agree with you. The person with the tool, like you mentioned, should make sure that the tool doesn't replace the human completely, and it's probably will be hard to do because like this ceiling of knowledge which LLMs are used to learn, it's created by humans. So we will need to remain active and smart and contribute to kind of like move up the ceiling so that LLMs can also become smarter, but never overcome the human.
I think even in that area of large language models that we're seeing right now is that there's not an awful lot of innovation from software vendors. It's like suddenly vendors are telling us, oh, we have this new AI feature. It does what we used to ask you to do with our software, but it does it better. Well, until it's actually really, really good, it's going to be as good as probably the best person that programmed or provided that data into the large language model. And people have faults. And there are unforeseen circumstances. And there are also those things, you get from a software vendor when they say, oh, it'll do A, B, and C. And you say, but does it do D? And they go, oh, it doesn't do D. Well, D might be the thing you want to do. And if the large language model doesn't have D in it, it's going to try and do it with A, B, and C, which is not going to be suitable. So it's exciting. But I think that you're very, very right in what you said there. They're limited by the data that goes into them. Now, that data is going to improve over time. It's going to, and the AI itself will improve over time. And I think it's not necessarily going to be that the computers won't have the same amount of brain power that a human brain has. That may happen in the next few years. It's what they do with it, is going to be important. Brain power and brain size isn't necessarily, doesn't correlate to doing the right thing, as we know.
Absolutely, yeah. And if it actually happens and we all replaced by AI developers, AI managers, then we better have some nice hobbies which we can use to spend our lifetimes.
Well, when the computers replace all the humans, who's going to actually have enough money to pay the companies that are just using computers and AI? It's a scenario of the utopia that I'm not quite sure how that's going to end up positively for humanity. But I'm looking forward to see how it turns out.
Absolutely, yeah, Fergus, that's a great conversation, and you've been a leader in the industry for many years, and you've been in different roles in different companies. So right now, many younger people who are just entering the college to study computer science, or just computer enthusiasts who just learn programming like Python or AI. So all of these people, I think, have they're excited about this future in technology, but also have a fear because of the topics we just discussed. So maybe you can share your your wisdom of best practice to these people who are just entering the IT and just learning, or just ready to graduate from the colleges and universities. So what would be your advice to these people?
I'd say have more fun in college, okay, than study hard, but enjoy the time you're in college. No, I think there's a lot smarter people than me out there who would probably give good technology advice to somebody who's going to be a go-getter, an entrepreneur, or a high technologist. But I'm a big believer in formal education, and for two reasons. I think you can learn a lot in academia, but also you build lasting relationships. I mean, my closest friends are people that I met in university. They're people that I trust. They're people that I always bounce ideas off. I ask for advice from. And I think that enjoy that period, because it's the best you're ever going to have. Because once you get into working life, things change. It's exciting. You learn lots of money, but you'll never be as creative or as free as your university times. But I think beyond formal education, I think specializing is really important. Become really good at something. I think that there's an awful lot of IT generalists out there. There are people who are in IT maybe because they drifted into it, maybe because they thought it was a good idea. But for every one really good specialist that I've ever met in my life, I've met 1,000 generalists. I've met 1,000 people who were just okay. They were good. They weren't great. But to be really great, just like anything, you have to put in your time. You have to specialize. You have to pick that one thing that makes you passionate enough to actually read the book cover to cover, to actually sit there in front of a screen at 3:00 in the morning, debugging something because you want to find out what was wrong and fix it. And it's that passion that makes people great. And in terms of being specialist, it opens doors, not only from a career and a money perspective, but a joy. And this is the one thing that I think in IT, since I graduated from university and worked through IT, it's gone from being an industry that was creative and joyful and interesting to being, pretty mundane. And, with the tools, the languages that have changed, if you're just on the mundane train, then it's not very exciting. So in order for it to be exciting and fulfilling, I think that area of specializing is really important. And also being able to reinvent yourself, because the skills you have this year may be useless in 5 years. So keep current, keep your fingers in. One of the things that I do, much to the chagrin of my team, is that I do occasionally write a line or two of code. And I stay current with technologies. I read a bit, but I also like to hear the opinions of people who are more knowledgeable, who are better, who are more hands-on. And try and understand what are the problems that you're having, and keep my skills, if not tip top, but at least current. And I think probably the other thing is have soft skills. Now, soft skills are just life skills. Being better at interacting with people, listening, and listening is one of the key things that IT people need to be better at, because listening to what people want, how people need to use systems that you develop for them, and also about how they feel about the systems. Feeling is a very human thing, and often, understanding how people feel about something will help you develop better technology solutions, whether you're a programmer or whether you're working in security or you're working in as a UX designer. Listening is a very key skill, and also being sociable and interactive with your own team. Doesn't mean that you have to be an extrovert. And in fact, I'm an introvert, and quite a lot of people that work in IT are introverts, but we force ourselves to be social. And the reason we do that is to be better at what we do. So I guess success isn't defined by the absence of mistakes. It's defined by how you react to those mistakes and how you develop yourself. And that's the key word, develop.
That's Fergus. That's a perfect suggestion. Is find the area where you're passionate about, become an expert, like really specialized in this area. Make sure you stay current and kind of switch area if it, for one reason or another, doesn't grow as good as you want, or doesn't go to the directions you wanted to go. And yeah, don't forget to have fun, not only in college but in our industry as well. Because I couldn't agree more. The industry becomes more commoditized and less fun is happening. It's like, I don't know, standardized, etc. So going beyond the standards and really the borders, and then the kind of sometimes don't listen to your managers for the good purpose, and find some better way of resolving problems, and then show it back to the managers, and everybody will be excited about that, is probably the key to keep the things exciting. Yeah, thank you, Fergus. That's a great suggestion, and that's I think it could be a great end of our conversation, and hopefully more nice people join our industry and kind of pick up from where we are right now, and help us grow our products, help grow our companies, and help to figure out what AI is in the future. Make sure AI doesn't replace us completely and our products completely, because this will not be good for anyone for sure. So yeah, Fergus, if you want to add something, please. But that was a great conversation.
Well, I think no, you've summed up well. I think the industry has really changed a lot, and I think that one of the things that we have to stay aware of is, hype. Hype is in fact, as you might by its own name, is overrated, and we are in a very hyped up industry where individual buzzwords and topics then take precedence over real skill and advancement. I think, the IT industry is full of smart people, and the smart people really figure out the difference between the hype and the reality. So hopefully the reality and the future looks very bright. And I look forward to looking back at this in 5 years' time and cringing at some of my predictions. But hopefully it will be a happier and a brighter future for everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you, Fergus. And for everyone who listened to us, thank you so much. And see you all in next NAX Tech Adopters series. Thank you, Fergus. That was a great conversation.
Thank you.